With God, there is always more. More love, more life, more freedom. Welcome to Zoweh's Exploring More with Michael Thompson. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "Our Heavenly Father has provided many delightful ends for us along our journey, but He takes great care to see that we do not mistake any of them for home." Join me and the team as we explore the kingdom together, discovering the deep truths and offering encouragement for the journey. There is always more. Welcome, friends and allies, to the Exploring More podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and I'm in the studio today with some very special guests, good friends, my wife, Robin Thompson, Rebecca Burnett, and Sherry Jennings. And you might be already asking, okay, wait a minute, where's SJ?
I'm here.
He's back. He's back behind us stalking this Exploring More podcast. But we're here with three outstanding women who are moms. And we are stepping into a 3-part series on the mother's heart, releasing it today, Thursday the 2nd, and looking forward to the other conversations we'll have all around Mother's Day. If you're listening and you don't know when Mother's Day is, it is Sunday the 12th, May 12th. So if that jolts you a little bit into getting down to
action,
Dillard's and getting the perfume and the whatever, what are traditional Mother's Day?
Anthropology would be fabulous.
No,
yes.
No. What are the traditional Mother's Day gifts, by the way?
Flowers
like
and chocolate.
Plants, flowers. Yeah, I mean, we got a lot of men. We got a lot of men listeners who need a little help, like me, and so don't go to Dillard's. We're talking. You're saying anthropology.
Now you're talking spa.
All right.
Facials, massages. Brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Spa days are high on the list this year. Sounds like flowers.
Yes, and plants are good because they last longer.
Yeah,
they have roots.
Depending on who you are.
Yes.
So
backstory there.
Yeah, there is Durham toffee.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. You can order Durham toffee for Mother's Day.
Yes. Or mother doesn't love Durham toffee.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, good. Yeah. Talking about a mother's heart through this series. And I'm just glad you guys are here. Really, you're experts, and one of the podcasts, the last one in this series, is going to be the men, talking about mothers, the mother heart of God, how we were raised. And this is a huge idea God had in how He created families, how He created marriage, how He created women, and what it looks like to be a mom, what was on His heart when He created us this way, created you specifically that way. So I want to talk about the mother's heart. Glad you guys are here. So let me just kick it off with, what do you think of when you hear that term mother, maybe mom? What does that mean to you?
For me, being a mom has always been such a high calling and an honor and a privilege. And I come from a mom who loved being a mom and told us all the time, I have no greater joy than to be your mom. And she lived that way and she loved well. And I picked up on that. I reaped the benefits of having a mom who loved well. So I've loved being a mom and consider it a huge privilege and responsibility and honor and joy. Yet it's also been the hardest thing that I've ever done. And there's been no greater joys, and no greater challenges or heartbreak and heartache as being a mom. But what it makes me think of now, looking back, I didn't know it at the time, but what God's been showing me these past few years is that it has taught me and was teaching me how to love and how to love well, and what does loving well look like as we mother and parent our children.
Yeah, that's good, Rob. We've got moms in some different stages. As I introduce you guys, again, that's a great opening. Robin's a mom of three girls.
Our oldest is Ashley, is 25. Hannah is 23. And Abby is turning 21.
Yeah. Rebecca, you have...
I have 5. And Sophie is 12. Hannah is 16. Gabby is 17. Blaze is 18 and Brooks is 19, and I am crazy.
Yeah, that's right.
Well done.
right.
You didn't know there'd be a quiz, did you?
And then Sherry, you
We
You
have
have a son- one son.
Stephen, who
Yep.
is 24, just turned 24.
I was with SJ and the guys, 400 and some guys at the last Heart of a Warrior weekend. And we're turning into one of the sessions, I think it was Saturday or maybe even Sunday morning about fighting for the hearts of your kids. And SJ elbows me before I go up there and he said, I just realized when my son gets married, I'll have a daughter. I'll finally have a daughter. So I think there's another aspect of even, Anders, our son.
Yeah.
/ son-in-law, and
Yeah.
so
Like a son.
so that's around the horn for who you're the mothers of. I think there's another interesting dynamic of who you're the daughter of, and we want to talk about some more of that. But Robin, you have a sister. Rebecca, you have
2 sisters.
2 sisters,
Mhm.
and Sherry has 3 sisters. So
Wow.
we've got a lot of
a lot of girls.
we got a lot of women experiences in growing up too that we'll talk about later in the podcast. But I love what you said, Robin, about how it came to you later. I know as your husband and growing up girls, our daughters, and even I think children in general, I didn't see it that way either, that they're in my life to teach me how to love. And God has partnered with them immensely to do that. But I think that's a big shift. And we would want to even invite all of our friends and allies to just even begin to consider while we're parenting, while you're mothering, that there's some things in that for your heart, for your healing, for your training. And I hear you say that, and I would just grab it and say, that is an overarching idea that we want to share throughout this podcast series, that there's more to being a mom clearly than just birthing children. There's something much deeper, epic, weighty, significant about a mother's role, what God meant when he created it this way, and how important even shedding some light on that could be as we share some of our thoughts. What about you, Rebecca and Sherry? When you hear the term mother, where do you go? What kind of definition or what kind of picture comes to your heart and mind?
It was interesting listening to Robin because it brought me back to my college days. And I was thinking being a mom was not on my radar. It was not something that I aspired to do. It was not something I was even really interested in. But I worked with this woman, Marlene, and she was my supervisor in the music department. And she said, "Oh, Sherry," she's a sweet Jewish woman. "Oh, Sherry, you've got to have at least one. There's nothing like being a mom." And of course I said, "Nah, not that bad." But she's right. It changed my life. And even when Stephen was younger, it wasn't something I felt like I was called to. And the more and more I learn, the more and more I realize how differently I would do it if I could go back to his younger years.
Right.
We
would all say that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh
And
my
it's
gosh.
it's certainly been a journey of wonder and discovery of his heart, of my heart. Gosh, just there's so much more. There's so much more. I'm loving him now. I'm enjoying being a mom now more than ever, and recovering, going back with Jesus and going back with Stephen and Scott some too, to recover some of those earlier years where I completely missed his heart.
And we all did in parenting, and specifically talking about a mother's heart. And it's really interesting between even what you said, Sherry and Robin, it got on your radar later, like in college, the idea. I know from being Robin's husband, it was on her radar earlier, that having a family, maybe not having kids, but having a family, because it was a family that you grew up in, your mom modeled motherhood in such a way that it was on your radar earlier. And so, Rebecca, how about you? What do you think of when you hear the idea, the term, the role of a mother, mothering, motherhood?
Yeah, I would say it has kind of evolved for me a lot over the years because I, very similarly to Robin, it's all I ever wanted from the very beginning. In some ways, it was almost a default. And there was so much health in that because my mom, I had an amazing mother, and she, in deep sincerity, loved and loves being a mother and encouraged us along those same lines. I do think, however, that at some point it became like a part of my value to be a mother. In fact, I even remember when I first was a mom of 5, I feel like maybe an unhealthier part of me wore that kind of like a badge, like I have 5. But what's so cool, as my children teach me so much, I feel like as God is healing me, mothering has become something so far beyond the physical. I don't know if this is the best time to say this, but I think it really needs to be said that mothering is so much more than physical. Mothering, to me, is all about bringing life, sustaining life, perpetuating life in every place. So every woman can be and is a mother to the extent that she's doing that. There's a lot of women who can't have children. It doesn't mean they're not mothers and that they aren't bringing something so weighty and beautiful too. Now, on these days when I am just exhausted and thinking, I don't like being this selfless, it's that vision of mothering that it just fuels me and it just makes me come alive. It's about stirring up life in every form.
Yeah, it's just almost a given to say, boy, were we naive.
Mm.
In the fathering, mothering, none of us knew what we were getting into. I remember our first one, Ashley, watching Robin go through that. All the films and movies are so funny. And then there's other ones where it's in a dramatic kind of story and film, and the woman is screaming, birth. It's just this crazy thing that in Genesis, somewhere in this fall idea, God says, okay, this is going to hurt now. I mean, so apparently it wasn't going to, but oh my goodness, if there's such thing as a beautiful pain, and I know there's a variety of stories out there that you wouldn't call them beautiful. I mean, bringing another being into this story, from conception to then birth and all the stories that we make room for in this conversation, we don't have time to be probably as sensitive as we would or need to. But I just remember we're there, Robin endures, does this, and they're asking us to take this thing home, this kid home in about 48 hours. I remember like, okay, wait a minute. Are any of you, can I have your cell numbers? I mean, this
would have been helpful.
I mean, it's just amazing that this is God's idea of raising and the birthing process. So I'm really curious about how you saw the naivety of, I want to be a mom, to becoming a mom. You go through a gauntlet of crazy. Your body's changing.
Gauntlet's a good word.
Yeah.
and
way better than obstacle course.
Me,
feels like life-threatening.
I had an epidural, and so the pain came, the hard for me came after, once we got home. And we were the first of our friends to have a baby. Well, also we were new. That's not exactly right. We moved from Cincinnati to Raleigh, North Carolina, and we didn't know anyone. So we were isolated anyway.
Yeah, we moved pregnant. So there was doctor changes.
That's
there
right.
was we had to make all those shifts.
Everything was a first. So when I brought Ashley home, I had no one to ask any questions. I had no one walking with me. And I had postpartum depression, but I had no idea what it was. Back then, it wasn't talked about. And I struggled hard for 2 months. And in the midst of that, Ashley and I couldn't get the nursing thing down. And she was literally starving. And when we took her for her quote unquote, child visit, they rushed her to the hospital. So those were hard, dark times.
Yeah. And there's a lot of stories like that. As you said earlier, Rebecca, there's stories where conceiving is just the hardest thing for so many. And so motherhood has a different definition, and that's hard. As we just hit these somber notes of what it was to birth children, I mean, there's a comedic side to it that's often shown, but I think you made a great point in your story. It's not that funny. It's really an ordeal. It's a big thing. And to have all the moving parts move well together, it may not be as normal as we might think. How about you guys in the birth experience? any stories of what that was like and this is really happening?
Yeah. So for me, I just think back to being pregnant, and I loved being pregnant. I was just the happiest, not sick, felt great every day
Yeah, me
pregnant
too.
woman.
Me
It
too.
was
I loved it.
fabulous.
Wow. I did not have that same experience 3 times at all. Good for you.
Thanks. And so it was interesting at about 16 weeks when they thought that something was wrong with the baby. And we were confronted with a choice of, well, do you want to abort or not? That was something that had been on my radar where I was very much about, you know what, if it didn't work, then abortion was okay. But I don't know, there's just something in it. I couldn't do it. We couldn't do it. I mean, there was that little person, and I just thought, oh my gosh, what if he's fine? And he was. And it's fun now since, and I'll go back to the birth story, but every year, the day before his birthday, we tell him his birth story. And we tell it over time because he was due in March, on March 8th. And on February 26th is when Scott and I were told that if you spend a whole week eating great food and having lots of sex, you'll go into labor. And I'm like, all right, I'm all about this. This is fabulous.
I was all about that too.
There's Scott.
Yeah.
So we started that with, this great dinner at a restaurant. And in between dinner and dessert, I ordered this incredible chocolate dessert and went to the ladies' room.
Oh, gosh.
And my water broke.
Did you get to eat any of it?
No, because back then the doctors would say, no, if your water breaks, don't eat anything.
Oh, gosh.
So I didn't,
I'll take that to go, please.
right? I didn't even think of that because it's first baby. We have no idea. I mean, I'm 28,
Right.
but still clueless. And so we went home that night and there were no contractions. Called the doctor and he said, well, just hang out at home until the contractions start. So I slept as contractions started in a rocking chair while Scott slept very well in bed. And so the night before Stephen's birthday, we tell him that part of the story and we say, to be continued. And then we pick it up in the morning.
Oh,
So in the morning, we did go to the doctor's office and he checked to be sure that I was dilated and all that and sent us to the hospital. And that's where we spent the entire day, it felt like, back and forth between the Pitocin and the epidural that I don't think worked because that was the most painful thing on the planet. And it was sleeting and snowing outside. And by 10:30, I had a baby. And I was so exhausted.
AM? PM.
PM.
Oh, man. That
So it was
was a long
27
day.
hours from start to finish.
Wow.
And I was exhausted. It was a battle getting that child out of me. And it was just one of those moments where, like, I'm exhausted. I don't want to hold him. I don't want anything. And because of just the whole situation, they had whisked him away to neonatal, whatever.
Right. Get him checked out, make sure
Yeah,
everything's working. Sure.
Exactly. And he was fine. We went home together and he was fine. And I was really blessed because my mom was near. My sisters, 2 of my sisters had had babies already, so they were baby experts. I was still trying to figure out this whole nurturing, mothering thing.
Yeah.
So it was interesting. And we loved telling him the story. So now we could tell it over 3 parts.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. You, Rebecca, have 2 that you had to bring into the world and then 3 that were given to you when you married David. So, yeah, you got an interesting motherhood compounded for you later in your story. But if you could speak to both of those just a little bit, because you are the girl's mom now.
Yeah, so 2 of them were given to me by God the normal way, I guess. And with Brooks in particular, everything went according to plan, which is kind of the way I was tracking and the life I was enjoying for the first part of my life. I loved being pregnant. I did get gestational diabetes with both boys, and that was complicating, but it didn't change. I still loved being pregnant. And Brooks was born in just a matter of maybe like an hour. Both the births were really fast. I mean, it was Pitocin induced and really, really intense, but they were fast, and I'm so thankful. But with Brooks, I felt that overwhelming sense of fulfillment and just satisfaction of having this precious little baby. But with Blaze, he was born 2 weeks early, which normally wouldn't be scary, but for a diabetic mother, it is. And so he had to be in NICU for 9 days. And it was a really hard and sad time. And people didn't know how to handle it, so they just didn't come at all. With Brooks, we had all kinds of visitors. With Blaze, we didn't have any. We had maybe one. It was really sad. But pregnancy and the birth, overall, everything was really, really precious. And I didn't struggle with postpartum or anything, thankfully. But then, yes, the other three, David struggled with the girl's birth mother, for 10 years with infertility. And so that was a thing for them. And he prayed and fasted, and they are gifts many times over, the three of them. But yeah, I was given them. And I'm still just astounded by my boys, but I'm also astounded that God would entrust me with these three girls. And I had always wanted a girl or three. So since we got married, I've adopted the girls. So they are actually my daughters and my boys' sisters. And it's priceless. It's a priceless situation. And I'm so thankful. And the five of them teach me too much.
Yeah. Lessons every day.
Yes.
So let me
Teach you how to love.
Yeah, you guys touched on this a little bit in the stories, and where I'd love to hear you share is what you believe God meant when he made women this way, this idea of motherhood. There's a whole crazy, wonderful, wild idea about, you used the word sex earlier, right? We heard an amen from the producers, Ben over here and SJ sharing about that. But I think conception, the whole idea of fertilization, the whole idea of pregnancy, that's a wild idea. God meant something when he meant that. It's this way because he wanted it this way. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you believe God meant when he created it this way. Before we jump into that big subject, it's a good time to take a break because I think we're going to be in this subject for a bit. So let's take a break and we'll be right back with the Exploring More podcast and these beautiful, wonderful mothers talking about a mother's heart. We'll be right back.
Hey, Exploring More podcast listeners, this is SJ, and I just wanted to bring something to your attention really quickly. We have a weekend for women coming up in September. It's Friday, September 6th through Sunday, September 8th, and it's something called the Women's Deepening Weekend. Some of you may be familiar with this weekend. Your wives or the women in your life maybe have attended, but if not, we want to encourage you. Hey, maybe as a gift for Mother's Day, for a birthday, whatever you think might be appropriate, not just for your wives, but also other women in your life. Maybe you've got daughters or your mom or aunts or whatever that looks like for you. But we want to invite you to invite them to spend a beautiful weekend in September uncovering the truth that they are seen, known, and extravagantly loved. You can get more details about the Women's Deepening Weekend by visiting Zoweh.org/the-deepening-weekend or visit Zoweh.org/events to see all of the events that we have coming up in the near future. We hope you'll take the opportunity to invite the women in your life to a weekend away for their hearts. Visit Zoweh.org for more information.
Welcome back to the Exploring More podcast. I just teed up the question, and let me share it again. So what do you think God meant when he meant for women to be mothers? What was on his heart and mind? And now looking back, as you guys can, with this journey of motherhood you've been on for 20 some years, all of you, what do you think?
It has been one of my favorite discoveries about God in past year or so, how our God is incredibly kind and tender and compassionate. He's nurturing, yet he is also simultaneously fiercely strong, protective, provider. He's a just God.
So you're connecting really the mother heart of God. You're talking about God.
Yes.
And how you see him transitioning that to what he meant then when he made a woman and motherhood.
Yes. And we as women are image bearers.
Right.
As men are image bearers. We bear the image of God as women in that we are so relational. We nurture. We are kind and compassionate. There's so much about us that reflects his heart. And yet we also bring that fierceness, that fierce love, that mama bear heart. And as I was thinking about this, I was thinking about mama bears, and I thought about penguins and the story of how mother penguins, God made us. He also made the animal kingdom. And it's fun looking at mamas in the animal kingdom. And after Emperor Penguin Mom lays an egg, she walks 50 miles to the ocean to catch fish and then return to regurgitate that fish to the hatched chick. The male, who also plays a vital role, has been keeping the chick warm while mom was away. So he passes the chick back to the feet of the female, who keeps him tucked close to her body to avoid the cold, which can kill a chick in just 2 minutes. Not only this, but a penguin mom has also been observed grieving for her young chick because they only lay 1 egg each year. The chicks are incredibly valuable to penguin moms. And I thought even that shows
That's
the heart of God.
Story. Yeah, that's crazy.
In his strength and fierceness, but tenderness. And they fight for their children. And we'll talk more about that.
Yeah, how many of us have seen Wild Kingdom or Nat Geo? And there's segments about this birthing and how critical a mom is, fierce, protecting them from predators in the greater kingdom, animal kingdom for sure. That's a very interesting point to bring up. I love that you brought that up. What we observe when we see, you said mama bears. So here's this nurturing, but every species seems to have this important element. Yeah, you don't want to mess with a mama's little ones, whatever they are, and the grieving and the sadness and the protection and all that. That's amazing to bring up. Go ahead.
Can I say about the mama bear? I have 7 stories of animal mamas that are fierce and tender and protective, but I do want to say where mama bear came from. Polar bear moms are some of the most dedicated ones out there. They gain over 200 pounds and spend 9 months holed up in a tiny den in preparation for birth, where mom goes 4 to 8 months without eating. She gives birth while in den isolation, and then when spring arrives around March, mama bear leads her cubs out to the ice to hunt seals. This is the beginning of a 2.5-year period where the cubs stick closely by her side. And the
seal mamas are trying to teach their
how to avoid
polar bears, right?
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah.
But lots of stories like that.
Lots.
They give their lives and sacrifice much for the lives of their cubs.
Yeah, their littles. That's
Again,
I
in the
love that you
image
brought
of
that
God,
up.
right?
Yeah, and the mother's heart. And how is it? It's not just in human beings, clearly.
Right.
This is something that's been set in motion, this reproducing in their kind.
Right.
What about you guys? When you see the image bearing, the connection between the mother heart of God and how you've seen or experienced what mom means to God?
When I think about what God meant when he made mothers and how we reflect his image, again, I guess it's the way I'm uniquely wired, but my mind goes to beauty. There's the physical design, of course, which is just mind-blowing, and that goes to the animal kingdom and humanity, but where the female body has the capacity to actually bring forth and sustain life in those early years is just mind-blowing. But then, too, I think something about the beauty of women, and when I say beauty, it might be good to define beauty. I don't mean the definition of beauty, the one that has been hijacked. I mean beauty in its purest form, where it has the ability to transport, where it transcends the visible and speaks hope, light, and lifts a person up. That kind of beauty is what I'm referring to. But women have a unique softness and ability to bring that. That's one of my favorite things to think about in this conversation, because when God was creating the world, beauty was a non-negotiable. And it's so powerful and it's so distorted, but it's clearly ridiculously important. And so I love that aspect of womanhood. And that when God thought about ways to stir up life and keep the life he had set in motion, and not just in motion, but abundantly so, beauty was a really large piece of that. And it's how we reflect him. Romans talks about how nature, and I love that we're talking about nature because nature reflects the invisible qualities of our God. And so I love that as a woman, the power tool doesn't seem like a good word, but it works here. The tool of beauty, uniquely as women, and it's not that men can't have some of that also, but uniquely and largely in women. And the way beauty has a really singular ability to nourish and comfort, heal and inspire. And I think that just is so much a crucial part, the crux of who women are and what we have to offer and how we really uniquely reflect the heart and image of God from the beginning of creation.
Yeah.
It's
So
good. It's good,
it's
Rebecca.
so important. This is a delicate thing that we're talking about because if that's true, and I think everything you just shared was true, I'm not going to repeat it, that women significantly bear the image of God in beauty. A little boy or girl born to a mom and dad, they're taking their cues from them. What does a man do? What does a man look like? Well, an 8-month-old isn't worried about that. He wants to know, where can I get my next meal? And am I warm or cold? Am I protected? And she is doing far more than being beautiful in that moment. But if Rebecca's right, then there's a very significant exploration from the child to this image-bearing heart, masculine and feminine, and they're taking their cues and they're taking in what a mother is, what a mother does, by what she's doing and how they observe her to be. This is huge and a much, much larger conversation. That's why I say it's a delicate thing, that if you believe it's that significant in how a woman bears the image of God, it's that significant then for a child to see it.
And it
in-
is. This is
in a mom and in a dad. Yes, she's fierce.
Mhm.
Yes, she's strong. She's protective.
Mhm.
But there's something in this subject that you're bringing up about image bearing in beauty as a mom, as a woman. And I think that's where we want to distinguish, just time out on primarily you're a woman. And then you have roles as a mom. Not every woman gets that role, even those who desperately want that role. And then there's assignments to, you had 2 and then 3 more. So the assignment is you're a mom with those 5. You're a mom with those 3. You're a mom with that 1. And that's your role as those children's mom. Does that make sense? I mean, this goes hand in hand with Gary Barkalow's conversation with the glory of your heart. You have a feminine heart. Go
And
ahead.
we also get to mother in the verb sense, other women and others.
Yeah, it doesn't
We
have to
get
be your children, is what you're
right.
saying. I love
like
that,
Rebecca
Robin.
mentioned earlier, we get to mother and nurture others. I think of
Mhm.
my role with women. I love coming alongside other women, and it can be a motherly type role.
That's great. And how many kids come to your home?
Oh, yeah.
Through junior high and high school,
Yeah.
are your kids coming to your
Hundreds
house?
Revolving
a day,
door.
it feels like.
Or are they coming to your house, or are they going to somebody else's house? So there are other mothers and fathers that are having these impressions and images too on little ones as they grow up. And some of them aren't good. Some of them aren't helpful, and others are. So I think you're bringing up a great component of this that's really important.
And you were going to say something, Rebecca.
I don't know if it's still relevant, but to the issue of how this is a very delicate subject, and it is somewhat mysterious, and we're not the dogmatic sort. So I like to give space.
Yeah.
But one thing that just the design of the female body suggests that beauty is meant to be softness, beauty, life-giving capabilities, all of that unique design of the female body seems to rather scientifically suggest some pretty strong things.
That's
Yeah.
a great point.
And I love that you brought up beauty, Rebecca. I'll never forget when Stephen was about 5 and I was in the bathroom doing the hair and makeup thing. And he came in, as little boys do, and said, "Mom, what are you doing?" And And I said, well, I'm getting beautiful. And he just looked at me like only a 5-year-old can and said, Mom, you're the most beautiful I've ever seen. What more do you need to do?
Oh.
Yeah. Thank you, Stephen. Yeah. Anything else, Sherry, on that? Because that's a great story. What else in this conversation of God? Do you have any other thoughts, responses to what did God mean when he meant for a woman to be a mother? And this thing he created, the mysterious, tremendous, amazing components, more than we have time to even explore. And at the end of the day, like you said, Rebecca, what a mystery, of how this works. And yet we want to try to get our arms around because this is something God designed, made you for. And I love that you said, Robin, if you don't have children, there can be a mother's heart. You can mother so many hearts in the way that you care for, nurture, stand up for.
Bring life.
Bring life to.
Bringing life.
Bringing life. Good word. Yeah, really good idea. What about you, Sherry? Anything else on this before we land this episode?
Well, I guess as I'm thinking about being a mom to Stephen and what that's meant is the more I'm doing it, the more I'm learning about God's heart towards me and how fierce that is, as I recognize how fierce my heart is for my son and how I prefer him and how God prefers me. So it's like the more I'm exploring my heart, I know, it's crazy. With Stephen.
He prefers us all.
Yeah.
You're his favorite.
Yeah,
I'm his
and
favorite.
just the unconditionalness of it and the how he sees me as I think about how I see our son. I mean, I'm still putting words to it. I'm still sorting this out. Kind of snuck up on me.
No, I think that's good. It lands on me that's where I want to start the next podcast is what's God taught you about himself and being a mom. Hold me to that for the next episode because I think that's a very grand idea. We bear his image, male and female, as that plays out as a father and a mother. And I think there's some passages that help us see that. When we see Jesus, we see something that is extremely powerful, especially with children, and how he cares for them as a man, but how he also, the nurturing, the image bearing. It's just really a fascinating idea and concept. So good. There's a lot. I think if we bring one more subject up, it's going to carry on for another 15 or 20 minutes, and which is a good thing. So thank you guys for coming in and sharing today and exploring more of the mother's heart on this podcast. And if you want to know more about Zoweh and exploring more podcasts, you can go to our website, www.zoweh.org. Lots of free stuff there, lots of things to check out. The Heart of a Warrior book, some more resources and things that we want to provide. Always, if you want to rate us on iTunes, we appreciate that. Go there and leave your comments and rate the show. If you want to communicate to us directly, you can go to an email address, exploringmore@zoweh.org. And we look forward to any questions or concerns you have for us regarding the show. Thanks for listening. Hope you have a great Mother's Day. We'll be back next week with part 2. We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Exploring More. The landing page for this podcast is zoweh.org/podcast. That's ZOWEH.org/podcast, where you can find the show notes and various platforms to which we broadcast. You can also find us and the Life of More by visiting Zoweh on YouVersion Bible app, Right Now Media, our Facebook page, and Zoweh on Instagram and Twitter. Remember, with God there is always more, and you were made for more.